In this episode of Association Chat, join me as I sit down with Brad Weaber. Brad is an award-winning event strategist and founder of Brad Weaber Consulting Group, a firm that provides strategic communication services to organizations, as well as advisory board creation and facilitation for destination management organizations. We delve into an important and timely topic and talk about SocialOffset, a nonprofit organization offering a socially conscious alternative to event and destination boycotts. Brad shares his passion for the cause and discusses the rising trend of organizations dealing with potential boycotts and the impact on the event industry. Full disclosure, I'm a founding board member of SocialOffset, so I'm not approaching this topic without any stakes in it. But I do think it's an important enough issue to talk about and to make people aware of. So here we are. Here's the episode, and I hope you enjoy it. All right. Welcome to the show, Brad. I'm so excited you're here. You have mentioned before that there has been a noticeable increase in organizations that are dealing with potential boycotts. And you talk about this idea of boycotts versus boycott and other issues related to legislation and local political climates. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering if you could provide some insight into this trend and how it's impacted the event industry.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And I'm excited to be here as well. And it's such an important topic. And yes, one of the things I have a privilege of doing with my firm is I facilitate a lot of advisory boards or innovation think tanks for numerous destinations and also internally with a lot of associations. And when we started getting some rumblings, we've always had rumblings in our industry about potential legislation things, and we've seemed to deal with it. And I think many times, we have done it with our pocketbooks. And now as we're facing more and more issues that are bigger and broader, planners are in a tough spot. And, looking at what do we do? And so about a year ago, I started polling audiences around boardroom tables about how many of you are facing right now potential boycotts of your currently booked business. And very few hands went up. People kind of shrugged their shoulders. And I'm talking about every market segment, including multiple aspects of the association, corporate, sports, you name it. And so we didn't go deep into a lot of these conversations, and we talked about some philosophical things. And in the past 6 months, I have probably seen now 60 to 75% of people putting their hands up saying, we are either dealing with it directly right now, or we're having conversations around the table about what states or cities we no longer can go to or consider for the future. And, obviously that is a big shift, and it's a concern to see that volume now potential of boycotting or canceling.
Yeah, it's interesting that has been such a dramatic shift. I guess it shouldn't be that surprising, but I think unless you're dealing with it yourself, or unless you have, it's your association or your client that's dealing with it, you kind of hope that it's not happening to the extent that it is. But given the complexities surrounding destination selection and the role of convention and visitors bureaus, we've got our CVBs that are involved in this process, but I know that there can be confusion as to who's responsible for what. Could you talk to us a little bit about this issue and how it impacts the decision-making process for meeting professionals? What is the role that CVBs are playing? What do we need to know about this?
So the CVBs are more critical today in advocacy and the work they're doing. I've been in the industry for 38 years. And I remember when I worked with CVBs, it was a lot about pulling together bid books and things of that nature. And today, more than ever, it is ambassadors, advocates, information gatherers on so many issues. And but also here's a big shift. Who's at the table now? And when I say who's at the table, is who is making a lot of the decisions for the organization. And I'm seeing now more CEOs, CFOs, chairmen of boards, procurement officers now getting involved in these decisions more so than I've had in my career. And so the DMOs or the CVBs, they have to come up with a new strategy on who are they speaking with. Are they, do they have the right tools? Are they set up to show like, well, here's what we're doing in our destination. Maybe we don't agree with the state, but here's what we're doing. And so there is the role of the CVB, I think, is more critical than ever. And when it comes to particularly this topic.
I know SocialOffset goes through a thorough vetting process to ensure that the organizations supported through SocialOffset are reputable and trustworthy. Mm-hmm. I would like you to maybe weigh in on why some of the measures that are taken to vet and evaluate these organizations that are recommended for support, why that vetting process is so important. I'm going to give you an example. So SocialOffset works, we work to recommend the organizations, partner organizations, to work. Let me go back. All right. This is worded weird and I'm trying to read it and it's like totally not working for me. And this is something that I added later because in talking with Elena this morning, she was wanting to make sure we talk about this vetting process because it's so important. So I've got a number of things running through my mind. Okay. All right. So I know SocialOffset goes through this thorough vetting process to ensure that organizations supported through SocialOffset are reputable and trustworthy. Can you weigh in on why some of these measures taken to vet those organizations are so important? Because I know that part of that is working with the partner organizations to figure out who to work with and who receives contributions locally. Why would it be important, for example, for DMO to be a part of that vetting process?
It's a great question, and they're critical in this role. So we don't know what we don't know sometimes. And, we may work with major organizations, charitable, whatever. And perhaps maybe there's something going on locally with a certain chapter or division of it that there's being watched. Prime example is there was, I'm not going to go into the destination right now, but there was a pretty major organization in a city that did a lot of support to LGBTQ teens, and money was being donated. And unfortunately, there was some impropriety, there was embezzlement, that type of thing, and it had to close. And imagine the embarrassment for not only the organization, but the destination, if that had been chosen. So it's critical that there is a partnership. One is that the meeting professional through SocialOffset could come forward and say, look, here's what we'd like to support. Here's what speaks to the mission and vision of our organization, which is why we want to stay and not cancel or not boycott. And by partnering with the local CVB, the CVB can then also help vet by going to, inside their local government and making sure that this is a viable option and that it's one that will be supported and is not going to create any issues for anyone involved. So I can't stress this enough that, there has to be multiple discussions around this. I also recommend that when you're vetting, that you meet with the actual organization that's going to be receiving and make sure that, that everyone's on the same page and that what you're delivering is actually what it is we're trying to help. So I again, it goes back to my comment about ambassadors and advocates. They have their thumb on the pulse in their local destination, and we should be using them.
So I love that. And I think that it's so important to think about ways that we're constantly looking to build bridges and work together instead of working in these silos and sort of, finding out later that there's something that we could have, maybe somebody could have helped us or like they would have guided us in the right direction. And so important that there is that collaboration to make sure that things move in the direction that they should.
Absolutely.
I know that one of the things about social offset, when I have seen it pop up on social media occasionally, and I'll see this in association chat, hi, association chatters. I will see comments that will come in sometimes from people who it's almost like an either or thing. And they'll say, well, associations need to completely stay out of it. They need to stay out of all values. They shouldn't be taking a stance. And I know that what we're talking about today is more focused on, the destinations and figuring out how all of these things play together. But for those who are new to this whole concept, this whole conversation, what would you say to that argument? This idea of you need to just stay out of it. It's not that simple all the time, is it?
No, it's not. And if I may, I want to step back a little bit and tell you why I volunteer my time and why I've become involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of different things, advisory boards, MC, all this. And Elaine and I were talking one time, and I was working with her on a project, something else. And she started kind of talking the concept about it with me. And I sat there and I got tears in my eyes. I'm actually tearing up right now. And as a professional in this industry and having been in it for a long time, I felt a tap on my shoulder to say, Brad, maybe you can now finally leave an imprint behind when you choose to hang it up one of these days and go swim by a swimming pool for the rest of your life. And I started thinking about, as a closeted young boy, and I did stay in the closet till I was much later in life. There's no other industry that supports and could have helped, I feel, my own story is the fact that I was gainfully employed in an industry that accepted me. We have a massive workforce development issue right now in the hospitality industry around the world, but particularly here in North America. If we continue to not support and stay and keep these jobs active and the career viable, we're hurting the people that we're trying to help. And every city I talk to right now is grappling with workforce development. And so I'm pleading this, I'm giving this long answer to associations to understand you want to create good events for your attendees. You want to drive education. You want to drive your mission and vision. But by the same token, if we don't have the people working in the jobs to take care of that, how are we going to move forward? So we can't turn our heads away from it. Look, I think, and there's also many, many different ways to support this.
Yes.
I think we get polarized into maybe one or two lanes, and we could be helping, underserved inner city youth. We could be helping homelessness. We could be helping veterans. I mean, we can be helping, cancer, some children with cancer. I mean, so I feel like the wake up I've had lately in my advocacy for Social Offset is that we have a giant story to tell of helping everyone. Mm-hmm. So I just caution that by taking hey, it's not our thing, we really shouldn't be touching this. Yes, you should. And I can't enforce that enough.
Yeah, I love how I've heard you put it before. And this boycott versus boycott, how you can really look at the impact that your dollars have in different ways. It's not necessarily, the answer is not necessarily pulling out of a destination. It's figuring out, how are we supporting our industry? How are we supporting the workers that are in each of these destinations, which, these are really important questions to ask when we're thinking about the human impact, human by human by human. Each individual that is impacted by decisions such as a conference is pulling out of one of these cities, one of these destinations. So, I do think these are not small decisions that are made ever. But I do think that, because it's such a complex issue, we need to think about what our options are and what some of our better options are to give everyone an ability to act on their values.
Yes. And I do want to say, look, one size doesn't fit all. And
Yeah.
there are going to be situations where an organization may actually need to not go somewhere because it could be to the detriment of the health of their attendees.
Mm-hmm.
So there are going to be times, and I am a believer that there are 12 sides to every situation and every story. And I have sat down with some certain organizations and I've chatted about this. And when it's explained to me why they can't because of a very specific reason, I get it. And so again, we can cover a lot with SocialOffset, and we can keep a lot of business, I think, in place through the work that's being done. And I also think one of the things we don't always ask is we may blanket a state with ideology type things, but if you sit down and you talk to the CEO of a destination who has jeopardized their career by going in front of a governor or going in front of a council or going in front of representatives and say, we need to protect the tourism and the hospitality business, and this is going to hurt. And when I hear some of the passionate stories from some of my clients of what they've done to showcase that, that alone makes me want to support, you know, and instead of blanketing a specific state or region, is take the time to ask the questions and then use SocialOffset as a tool in your toolkit to continue to advance the work you're doing.
Oh, well said. Well said, Brad Weber. Well, so considering this ever evolving, and it is ever evolving, it seems like every day there's some new legislation, there's some new news story that we're contending with. So things are constantly changing. Because of that, what are some of the next steps and areas of focus for you in terms of talking about things like SocialOffset with your clients in the near future? What are you thinking as far as those next conversations that you have lined up? What are they going to look like?
It's interesting. SocialOffset is the best kept secret right now, and so we have to really do a lot more work on getting it out there. And so what I'm really happy to report is that it's organically now coming up at tables. And I'm always cautious because if I'm facilitating something, I'm volunteering over here, I step back and I listen, and I'm now hearing the term or the name SocialOffset being brought up as a solution by planners while they're discussing. So I'm very happy about that. So I think, again, it's awareness, it's creating that awareness, showcasing that this is a tool and that we need to be looking at this. I also think we need to be careful and that we don't assume that there are certain cities or states that are never going to touch this. Tammy was Seattle made a great comment one day when I was on the call with her when Elena asked and said, I want to ask you, your state, Washington, Seattle, and she's like, everyone's just one election away from change. And it made me sit back and it kind of took my breath away that none of us can become complacent or comfortable when it comes to how quickly we are changing, and so again, I thought that was an amazing conversation, and that we should not just assume because we're in this particular place and maybe we booked it today, what's it going to look like in 6 years from now when we actually go to attend.
Yeah.
So it's creating an awareness about the psychology of buying for the future, making sure that that there is a lot of understanding and things are in place. And again, just to continue advocacy around, what SocialOffset is doing.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, as they say. I mean, I really hope that everyone really pays attention to this, that they begin to ask the important questions. Will this impact us? How will it impact us? If it's already impacting us, how can we go about addressing some of these issues? But I think, thinking about these things in advance you're just one election away. Thinking to do in these situations, so important. As we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add or any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Truth is kind. And I think what I love is that this has been a very open and truthful conversation. And I think that as polarizing as things are right now, I do believe that we all do come to the intent of trying to do good work. And I think sometimes it just gets lost in the wildness of our lives right now. So I just think that if you are someone who is grappling with the mission and vision of your organization and is not feeling right to you, you have to be true to yourself and, and keep your voice active and keep your voice going. I can't emphasize enough. Forget any political issues, forget anything else, how you feel. We have a crisis in our industry right now. We are not able to attract and retain the level of people that we deserve. And we, unfortunately, have handed over amazing professionals to other industries now that used to be part of us. So we all have a duty to continue to help build, rebuild, and retain this amazing industry. And truth is kind, and be true to yourself.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode of Association Chat. We hope you gained valuable insights from our conversation with Brad Weaber, and we hope that you learned a little something about SocialOffset and its mission to provide a socially conscious alternative to event and destination boycotts. Remember, it's crucial to consider the impact of our choices on the hospitality industry and the communities we visit. We encourage you to explore SocialOffset and join the movement toward a more socially responsible event industry. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Association Chat.